In just one sentence, one arrogant, interrupting sentence, Justice Samuel Alito did not ask a question that he confessed before a packed Supreme Court and 180 million viewers watching the historic live feed. Jasmine Crockett was systematically laying out the case for federal corruption. She had not once mentioned his name, but the evidence, the trail of money, the shell corporations, was leading directly to him, and in a stunning, catastrophic breach of protocol. Alito could not stay silent. He interrupted her, and in that one moment, he handed her the one weapon she needed to end his career. The air in the Supreme Court was so thick, you could feel the history. This was the day they would decide if the Project Phoenix conspiracy, the destruction of 2,047 Epstein files, would be buried forever. The 9 justices sat as judges. They had no idea. One of them was a suspect. The lawyer for the Department of Justice, a man named Harrigan, stood at the lectern, his voice smooth and dismissive. Harrigan argued, "Mr. Chief Justice, members of the court, the entire case before you is a simple administrative error. The 2,047 files were duplicates. Their destruction was a routine procedural matter to save server space. This is not a conspiracy. This is paperwork." He sat down. He looked confident. He believed the fix was in, and then Jasmine Crockett walked to the lectern. The courtroom was dead silent. Jasmine Crockett began, "Mr. Chief Justice, members of the court, Mr. Harrigan claims paperwork. He claims administrative error." She paused, letting the lie hang in the air. Crockett continued, "Today, I will prove that it was not error. It was policy. It was not negligence. It was a payoff. It was a coordinated criminal plan to protect the most powerful from the truth." She turned to the first exhibit. "Let's review the facts that are not in dispute. Mr. Harrigan claims this was routine. Was this routine?" Exhibit 12A. A swift transaction. $12.7 million wired from a known Epstein holding company to a shell corporation. Takedown Strategic Solutions, registered to Attorney General Pam Bondi's brother-in-law. "And this," Crockett said, clicking to the next slide. Exhibit 12B. A second wire transfer. $8.9 million from the same Epstein account to a different shell company. Patriot Legal Defense. This one registered to FBI Director Kash Patel's cousin. This money, Crockett stated, over $21 million was transferred in the 72-hour window before both Bondi and Patel signed Project Phoenix. She looked up, her eyes scanning the bench. Project Phoenix was the authorization to illegally destroy all 2,047 files, files that this Congress had subpoenaed 1 week earlier. The DOJ wants you to believe this is a coincidence, that it was paperwork that just happened to be worth $21 million. Crockett's voice dropped, but Bondi and Patel were management. They were brokers. They took a commission. They were paid to silence the investigation. The real question before this court is not if a crime was committed. The question is, who were they protecting? Chief Justice Roberts leaned forward. "Counselor, that is a serious allegation. Where is the rest of this conspiracy?" "I'm glad you asked, Mr. Chief Justice," Crockett said. "Let's look at where the rest of the money went." Exhibit 51A. A new shell corporation. The Merit Freedom Fund. Registered in Delaware. On the bench, Justice Samuel Alito, who had been leaning back, sat up. His posture changed. He placed his hands flat on the bench. He was listening. Crockett continued, "This corporation, the Merit Freedom Fund, received $5 million from the same Epstein holding company that paid Bondi and Patel." The other justices were now looking at each other. This was new. "Now," Crockett said, "this is where the story gets interesting. Because the Merit Freedom Fund was not registered to a family member. It was registered as a 501c4, a social welfare group, a group with no other donors, no other activity. It was a ghost corporation designed for one single transaction. And this group is mentioned in federal records." She turned the page. In fact, It is mentioned in the 2023 federal financial disclosures of a member of the federal judiciary. You could hear a pin drop. Justice Samuel Alito, Crockett said, in your 2023 disclosure, you listed the Merit Freedom Fund as an organization you had consulted for regarding judicial ethics. Alito's face went pale. Crockett said, you claimed it was a legitimate ethics advisory group, but our forensic accountants proved it was a shell company, a pass-through funded by the Epstein estate. You, Justice Alito, lied on your federal disclosure forms. Alito was staring, his knuckles white. But why? Crockett asked. Why lie? Why hide? Epstein's money? What was the money for? Was it for this? Click. A new exhibit. The $5 million was wired on March 15, 2023. This is important because on March 18, 2023, just 72 hours later, this court, the Supreme Court, issued a ruling. You denied a petition from victims groups to unseal the full Epstein client list. The press gallery erupted in whispers. The vote, Crockett said, was 5-4. The deciding vote was Justice Alito. You, Justice Alito, Crockett said, her voice rising, took $5 million from the Epstein estate through a sham corporation, and then you personally cast the deciding vote to keep their client list secret. This, Justice Alito, is not ethics. This is a bribe. Alito was visibly shaking, but Crockett was not done. But what, she asked, did you do with the $5 million? We know you did not declare it as income. Our investigators traced the entire $5 million to one single transaction. The purchase of a luxury fishing vessel. Crockett was about to continue, but Alito snapped. He slammed his hand on the bench, his face red with rage. In a stunning, total breach of protocol, he interrupted her. Justice Alito shouted, Counselor, what does a boat have to do with anything? Are you suggesting that a federal judge can be bought for a fishing trip? That is an outrageous and unfounded accusation. The entire court froze. The Chief Justice looked mortified. Jasmine Crockett did not move. She did not flinch. She smiled. She turned slowly to face Justice Alito directly. Her voice was not a hammer. It was a blade. Jasmine Crockett said, Justice Alito, I never mentioned a fishing trip. The blood drained from Alito's face. Crockett continued, I said a luxury fishing vessel. A boat, sir, not a trip. And I never mentioned a Supreme Court justice. I was discussing a federal judge. I was discussing a pattern of corruption in the federal judiciary. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, but heard by everyone. Sir, why was your mind on a fishing trip? Justice Alito was speechless. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He was trapped by his own words. Jasmine Crockett held the silence for 5 agonizing seconds. Then she turned back to the Chief Justice. Crockett stated, Your Honor, it seems, in my attempt to expose a pattern of corruption, I have accidentally received a confession from the bench. I rest my case. The chamber erupted. The Chief Justice slammed his gavel, but it was too late. Alito sat in defeated, humiliated silence. His career ended, not by evidence, but by his own guilty conscience. What happens now? When a Supreme Court justice confesses in open court, can the entire system survive what he just revealed? Subscribe, because the truth is finally out.